Hey guys, welcome back to Primer Podcast. I'm Jessica Flake. We are back with our local counselor, Nathan Blake,
Yeah.
and just so grateful that
Mm.
you're doing this with us. And I know it's been beneficial to me to hear and be able to experience these conversations with you and conversations with others that are reading along in the book
hmm
and the sermon series. And
Yeah.
it's just been just a great season to think about our thoughts.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And yeah, so what have you thought about the study so far?
Well, I love that a church is tackling elements of mental health. I think that sometimes in the church we're kind of afraid of mental
Mm-hmm.
health world, and for me in my background, this kind of merger of spirit and mental health is something that I have been a part of for my whole career, and
Mm-hmm.
so I've just loved seeing the response, and people have been so kind to me to send me responses and gratitude for some of these podcasts and things we've been talking about, and so I've been grateful
Yeah.
to be engaged with everyone, and it's been a wonderful series so far.
Yeah. Yeah. I've just really enjoyed it. We were doing the study going along with the book
Yeah.
with a group of ladies on Thursday morning, and it's just been eye opening
Ooh. Yeah.
to I know my insecurities
Yeah.
and I know my thoughts, but it's so interesting how uh as we're experiencing this and
Yeah.
we're diving really deep into um what insecurities we have, what our thought
Yeah. Patterns are.
patterns
Yeah.
are, where we tend to spiral,
Mm.
and so like um and to be honest, like I feel like
Yeah.
the enemy when we're talking about this,
Mm.
um the enemy is just one, he hates it, right?
Mm.
He
hmm
I feel like that he does not want us to um realize that this is something that we
Mm. hmm
can control.
hmm
But the last 2 weeks of our study, I've I think I've exposed some things in myself,
Oh,
to
interesting.
myself
Yeah.
that that tend to a lot of times probably sweep under the rug a little bit and
Yeah.
move past really really
hmm
quickly. And so doing the study alongside of friends and trusted people
Absolutely.
that we're able to dig deeper into and be vulnerable with each
Yeah.
other. So
Yeah. Anything in particular that you've been surprised by, or that has really kind of got your attention in a new way?
I think the realization of like where the thoughts
Uh,
are coming from.
oh, interesting.
So
Yeah.
like I said, I've known my insecurities.
Yeah.
Like I intimidated probably about
hmm
like public speaking, and yet I do feel like
Uh huh.
God is
Uh huh.
is um
You're filming a
I'm
podcast every
doing the
week.
podcast, and I'm
Yeah.
I'm in front of a larger crowds than I ever would have thought
hmm
I would have been doing. But God continues
Yeah.
to walk alongside of me during these
Oh,
times.
awesome.
And but what has I've known those insecurities,
hmm
but where I've realized where they're coming from
hmm
based on going alongside of the study is seeing that it's a lot of my own assumptions in
Yeah.
myself,
Like the stories you
the
tell
stories I
yourself
tell myself.
about
Mhm.
yourself. Yeah.
Yes, a lot of times I was talking to a friend yesterday that I tend to put words in other people's mouths
hmm
sometimes
hmm
of what they expect of
hmm
me.
Yes.
And so like it's never
Uh-huh.
something that they
That's
voice,
right.
but I have assumed
hmm
that
Yep.
that they're expecting perfection of
Oh,
me.
uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And so
Because you expect that of
Right.
yourself. Yeah.
And I don't know how much. Well,
Yeah,
talk about it.
we do that in partnership a lot
Yeah.
too. I think about in our marriages, I think is where it comes up so often is that we assume our partner's thinking one thing about
Mhm.
us, and that can cause conflict, between us. But even deeper than that, when we have a story about ourselves, we look for, and we covered this a bit in the first week, but we look for examples of how that story is true.
Mhm.
And so if the story is, I need to be perfect, I expect myself to be perfect, the world expects me to be perfect, we go looking for confirmation that that story is right.
Right.
And when we do that, we end up continuing to feel that burden. And part of what Groeschel's getting at in the book, in the chapters for this week, is beginning to uh, interfere with some of those thought patterns to begin telling ourselves a new story. And
Mhm.
he does it by way of talking about the ruts that we create in our
Mhm.
brains. And it sounds like for you, that has been one of the kind of ruts that you fall into. That
Mhm.
if you're doing something where you're speaking in front of folks or you're filming a podcast, this mental expectation that I have to be perfect,
Mhm.
or even the thought that when you finish it, like, did I do that perfectly?
Right. Yeah.
That's a rut that you might tend to fall into.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I would say that it's the pursuit of perfection is the truthfully
yeah,
it's the not wanting to show the weakness.
yeah.
And so the a lot of times in my past, I would so so thinking of like thought spirals,
Mm,
right? So like
mm-hmm,
I focus on this one thing I think I did wrong.
mm-hmm.
And in my past, I would say that I would have let myself spiral,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then usually it would have probably stopped me from moving
You
forward.
got it.
And so like
It
I
would
would,
impact your behavior.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so I've learned little things that would
Hmm.
help me along the way.
Absolutely.
Doesn't necessarily mean that those thoughts are no longer valid.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Yeah, Groeschel really addresses the thoughts, which I think is helpful in how we kind of begin to interfere with those. And he talks about thinking about our thinking. Um, Thought spiraling in the counseling world, we often call it rumination.
Mm.
This idea that when we get an intrusive thought, we then have the decision, is this something that I want to capture and hang on to and continue to let it fester and manifest itself in the world around me and in my behavior? Or is this something that I can acknowledge, I can see it, I can speak against it, and then move on?
Mhm.
And one of the ways I think he doesn't go into this as much, but something that I will often do in the office, which I think is contrary to how we normally see interacting with our thoughts, is in some ways befriending them.
Mm.
Meaning that I think that most of our thoughts, just like most of us, don't transform without love. And if we understand a bit about what those thoughts are trying to do for
Mm.
us, right? If we think about this thought that I need to be perfect, in some ways that is trying to protect you
Right.
from shame,
Mhm.
from embarrassment. And if we understand that that thought is trying to protect us, then we can feel some compassion for it.
Mm.
And instead of being afraid of it or trying to dismiss it or trying to, like, fight it,
Yeah.
uh, we are approaching it in a way of curiosity and
Mhm.
compassion so that we start to learn, oh, this is a part of me that is trying to help.
Mm.
It's trying to protect me, but the way it's going about it is not helpful in my life.
Right.
So part of how we begin to combat that or um, insert ourselves into those thoughts is by understanding why it's there in the first place and beginning to help it recognize it doesn't have to show up for us.
Mhm.
That let's take the perfection, for example. I hate to keep picking on you.
You can. You're fine.
But, if the thought is, "Oh, no, I'm afraid of doing this podcast because what if I'm not perfect?"
Right.
Right? Then we see that as, "Oh, this is a part of me that's trying to protect me from shame or embarrassment."
Right.
And in reality, it is really, really difficult to get on camera and film, and the folks that are watching it are gonna glean from it what they need.
Hmm.
They're not as closely monitoring my speech or what I say, like I am. So
Right.
you know what? I'm gonna go film it, and hopefully what I say will be helpful to someone.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I read something the other day that said a lot of times our thoughts, if we will stop
Mhm.
and take a deep breath
Mhm.
and have compassion for yourself of
Yes.
just saying, you know, there's somebody will still get
Yeah.
something out of this,
Yeah.
even if I'm not perfect, even if I'm not
Absolutely.
totally polished.
Uh-huh.
And I was talking to my friend yesterday saying, I truly think like my thought is, I will never be polished like what my expectation is for myself.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But yet, I truly feel like what God's speaking is
Yeah.
that you're not supposed to be
Mhm.
that in Him I'm
Mhm.
perfect, not in myself.
Mhm.
Like I cannot ever be perfect, and so this is just continuing to allow myself to realize that I need to rely on God,
Yes.
and so I will admit, like sometimes, especially in my thought spirals,
Mhm.
God is the last thing I think of.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but yet if I allow myself to
To
pause,
pause.
and take that deep breath, and
Yeah.
I remember one that in God I am perfect,
Mhm.
and but He doesn't expect perfection
Mhm.
from me,
Mhm.
and so I think that has what it's been something that has helped me in realizing that it's in His Word
Yeah.
that I find comfort,
Yeah.
and just being able to go back to the His Word,
Yeah.
and being able to see that He's walking, like I said
Yeah.
before, is in these times that I am very nervous,
Yeah.
that He
Yeah.
is right here beside of me
That's
and
right.
encouraging me along the ways. And like I truthfully, I think of um, what He told Moses when Moses was pretty
Mm.
much telling the same thing. He's
Mhm.
saying, "I fumble over my words.
Yeah.
Why? Like, are you not? Why not my brother Aaron?"
Right.
And God said, "It is it not." I
Mhm.
can't remember exactly the words, but basically saying, like, I will give you the words,
Mhm. Mhm.
and and like you mentioned, it's like it might not come out of my mouth
Right.
perfectly,
Right.
but it may speak to someone
Somebody. Yeah.
because it's God's words that
Yeah.
being spoken to if I'm following
Yeah.
God. And
Yeah.
um, so I did want
Yeah.
to
Please.
to
Please.
read
Yeah.
Deuteronomy 11 verses 18 through 20 says, "Fix these words of mine in your hearts and your
Mm.
minds. Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them to your foreheads. Teach them to your children, talking about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road,
Mm.
when you lie down and when you get up. Write write them on the door frames of your houses and on your gates." I mean, you think about that, like what this is saying is always,
Mm.
always have these words of mine on your
Mhm.
heart.
Mhm.
And as you go to bed, as you wake up,
Mhm.
always think
Yeah.
of God's words, and like in
Invite truth into spaces where those intrusive thoughts are wanting you to believe a different narrative.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you know, I in my study on Thursdays, we were talking about memorizing scripture and
Mm.
how
Mhm.
that's something that I'm not the best at.
Yeah.
I think
Right.
probably a little ADD in the
Uh-huh.
sense of
Uh-huh.
like, you know, I might memorize it for a period of time, but then I also feel like, for that season.
Mhm.
But I think that is so helpful to recognize that, it's certain whatever thought you have in your mind,
Yeah.
you can find a word to, like, combat that,
Yeah, to speak
to
against it.
speak against it.
Yeah, Groeschel talks about it like I said, these ruts. And in counseling world, we use the term neural pathways. These pathways are like the highway in the brain
Mhm.
that create an understanding of the world around us. It influences our behaviors, and oftentimes it forms these ruts because it's repetitive. So if you have the same thought before you go onto stage, or before you meet your partner for dinner,
Mhm.
if you have these same thoughts, then it creates this kind of assumption in your brain every time that stimulus is presented. And it's similar to behavior. If we do a behavior, a habit, over and over and over and over, our brain begins to associate that behavior with certain things. Like when I'm working with folks around alcohol use, for example.
Mhm.
If every time you watch a football game, you have alcohol, right? Your brain starts to associate, oh, football's on the TV. I'd like a cold beer, for
Mhm.
example. And if you want to begin shifting some of those behaviors, we have to recognize that it's not an overnight change,
Right.
right? So, what we're talking about is developing new habits of interacting with our thoughts and our
Mhm.
behaviors that begin to shift the narrative we have about ourselves and the way that we show up in the world around us.
Mm.
Um, and I think this week, Groeschel kind of gets more into that. And I imagine Pete will on
Mhm.
Sunday as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so
Cool.
much.
Yeah. Thank
I
you.
feel like this was my little therapy session. So
Good. I'll bill
thank
you.
you.
Yeah.
All right, guys. We hope that you have a great discussion in your groups and your individual discussion as well. And we'll see you soon. Bye.
Take care.